Baseball is back. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, July 22nd, and welcome to the second half. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, injuries, and more injuries. That has been a theme of the season. It was a theme of this weekend as well. We have all the waiver wire ads, some impressive pitching performances from three youngsters, and much more. But first time recapping games in a while, there's only one soundbite we could use to start today's show.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Oh my goodness gracious. Chris, you are up. Player of the weekend.
Of course you come to me first because you know that I was going to talk about a Yankee.
Yeah.
And you had to get that homer pick in there without appearing yourself to be a homer. And that's okay. I'll fall on the sword. I love my New York Yankees. And Gerrit Cole has looked like Gerrit Cole over his past two starts. He struck out 8 over 6 1-run innings in this one on Friday against the Rays. He went, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts in the previous start. That one against the Baltimore Orioles. So he's back, right? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird because the version of Gerrit Cole that we have seen be one of the best pitchers in baseball has done so primarily by throwing a four-seam fastball about 50% of the time, throwing a slider about 20 to 25% of the time, and then mixing in a curveball and a changeup. The last couple of years, introducing a cutter. Right now, Gerrit Cole is barely throwing his slider at all. He threw 6 of them in this start, got a couple whiffs. That's nice. But it was the cutter that led the way for whiffs for Gerrit Cole in this one. He threw 29 cutters in this start. I haven't looked it up. I'm going to guess that's the most Gerrit Cole has ever thrown in a start. I don't really feel like we need to look that up because that's a lot of cutters for a guy who just started throwing a cutter. It is the most cutters Gerrit Cole has ever thrown in a start.
You looked it up anyway.
It was really good. Yeah, I was talking while looking it up, so I figured I might as well. He generated 12 called strikes plus whiffs in this start, 41% CSW rate, by far the best rate among all his pitches. And the cutter was a good pitch for him last season. Whiff rate, I think, was right around 30%. Good results on balls in play. It looks like a good pitch. It's just not the pitch that has made Gerrit Cole. And so that's the thing that I'm tripping up on. The results have looked like Gerrit Cole the last couple of starts. Can we assume that the results are going to continue looking like Gerrit Cole moving forward? It's sort of what we saw with Carlos Rodon early in the season, where he was getting good results, but it was in a different way than we'd gotten used to seeing. And that turned out to be unsustainable. Gerrit Cole's a better pitcher than Carlos Rodon. Gerrit Cole's cutter is probably a better pitch than Carlos Rodon's cutter. So as you can
fastball's better, right?
Fastball has been better this season and last.
Yeah.
Yes. As you can tell, I'm a little tripped up on the Gerrit Cole thing right now, and I'd love to hear the thoughts of Scott White and Frank Stampfl.
Well, I mean, I noticed the same thing with the slider and the cutter kind of replacing it, and I wonder if that is him just being extra cautious with his elbow, or maybe having some discomfort, because slider is a pitch that famously puts a lot of pressure on the elbow, and maybe he's just being extra careful with the elbow for whatever reason. And so I don't know that it's a permanent arrangement necessarily. I think we can't say for sure, obviously, where Gerrit Cole goes from here, but he's been a pitching god in an era that hasn't been so favorable to pitching. And so I feel like that caliber of player, I just trust him. I just trust him, particularly once we start seeing him have some success. Okay, he's found a way to make this work, and I'm planning on just having him in my lineup the rest of the way.
And that was the next question. Gerrit Cole gets the Mets later this week. He's 84% started. I assume most people are going to start him. But if there's any pause, he faced the Mets earlier in the season. It was his second start back from the IL, and he gave up 6 runs, 4 homers, 4 walks to 0 strikeouts. Does that give you any pause at all with starting Gerrit Cole this week?
No, I'd still start him.
Scott?
Yep. Same for me.
All right, fair enough. And with that, Scott, let's go over to you, player of the weekend.
Okay, well, we're both passing up the breadstick, so that's fine. We'll get to that soon enough.
We don't want to get our fingers greasy.
We'll save the best for last.
We're actually being courteous here to you, Frank. Jackson Chourio. I want to talk about Jackson Chourio, who had a big weekend. He had 5 total hits this weekend, a double and a home run on Sunday, 2 stolen bases on Saturday. And if you add the big weekend to what Jackson Chourio has been doing since the start of June, so a month and a half now, a little more than a month and a half, I guess. I mean, I don't even have the numbers updated with today's stats, but he's batting .303. His OPS is mid 800s. He looks like the player we were hoping to draft. His strikeout rate during that stretch is like 18%. So that's not an issue. That really hasn't been an issue all season, surprisingly. Thought if anything was going to bring Chourio down to be the strikeouts, but no, it's been the impact, his ability to impact the baseball, but it seems to be coming around. He's put up those great numbers since the start of June. That includes 5 home runs. That includes 5 stolen bases, again, at about a quarter of a season. So project that out. It's been like a 20-20 pace with a batting average over 300 for Jackson Chourio. His average exit velocity during that stretch, 90 miles per hour. Certainly no complaints about that. His max exit velocity for the season is still just over 50th percentile. So middling, but middling's okay. You know, you don't want him to be bad in terms of how hard he can impact the ball, what his peak exit velocities are, but it's in the middle of the pack. Like I said, last quarter of the season, hitting the ball hard on average. I think this is a case of a really talented player finally coming into his own during a time, obviously, when young prospects of any caliber have had a hard time breaking into the big leagues. Hitters, I'm talking about especially. It's taken Chourio a while, but he seems to be coming around. We're seeing that talent come through, and I'm hopeful. I've probably been the most disappointed in him, expressed the most disappointment in him, if anybody in this podcast, in part because I was the most optimistic coming into the season. But I'm hopeful this is Jackson Chourio finally proving he belongs, and hopefully it's a sign of a big second half to come.
And one thing I want to point out, you mentioned the disappointing max exit velo only being around average 109.2 miles per hour. One thing to keep in mind is we default to max exit velo as this marker of raw power. That's typically how we use it. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is max exit velo is a one-time thing. And so, like, to pick one example, I don't know if you guys realize this, Ozzie Albies recently hit a 113.7 mile per hour home run. It's the hardest hit ball of his career by more than 2 miles per hour. And he's really never come close to that. Jackson Chourio's hardest hit ball this season is 109.2. That's pretty middling, as we said. Just on Saturday, I believe. Sunday was the day he had the home run and the double.
Yep.
He had a 108.6 mile per hour batted ball and a 107.7. That's very close to his max. So I don't necessarily know if, the max exit velo being middling, if that's even something that I would hold too much against Chourio, since he's generating exit velocities near there more recently.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about the batted balls on Sunday. That home run traveled 443 feet, so he walloped that one, Jackson Chourio did. And a quick reminder that he's 20 years old, right? And we had the extensive conversation on Friday about top prospects kind of being letdowns and developments over the past couple of years with prospects. So he's still extremely young, and I believe he was one of the prospects that, like, when he would first get called up to a level, he would kind of struggle for a little bit. and then he would just dominate that level.
That's what we saw last year, especially.
Yeah.
The strikeout rate was way higher in the first half of the season than the second. But yeah, Jackson Chourio will be able to have his first legal drink in the United States during next year's spring training.
Right.
Like, he's not just 20. He turned 20 just before the season. He is really, really young. You generally want to bet on guys who are, if you can keep your head above water as a 20-year-old, you're probably going to be pretty good. And I think it was reasonable to lose faith in Jackson Chourio being a difference maker this season.
Right. That's always what the conversation was, because it's fantasy. We mostly only care about this season.
But now he's starting to show us that, he might be able to make an impact. Well, he's already making an impact.
I'm hopeful. And that's kind of how it went for Gunnar Henderson last year. It's kind of the way it went for Bobby Witt 2 years ago. There's a steeper learning curve, but that doesn't mean it takes a full season necessarily.
All right, let's get into my player of the weekend and the Olive Garden breadstick. Massive performance here from Hayden Birdsong at the Rockies Coors Field. Yeah, I was trying to think of a soundbite to get for Birdsong. So if anyone has any good ideas, we can work something in. But an awesome start, 6 innings, 2 runs, 12 strikeouts. He had 27 whiffs on 98 pitches, 12 of those on the curve, 10 on the slider, 4 on the fastball, 1 on the changeup. Completely changed his pitch mix in this start. Maybe it was a Coors Field thing. Maybe not. It's kind of weird because he leaned into all these breaking pitches, his curveball, his slider. Normally, that's not something I would expect from a pitcher in Coors Field. But yeah, he tripled his curveball usage. He upped the slider usage in this one. And both of those pitches were fantastic. They combined for 22 of his 27 whiffs. First quality start of his career. First time going more than 5 innings in a start. Chris, how much are you buying this huge performance from Hayden Birdsong, who is widely available? He's only 13% rostered.
So he's a player who I was kind of interested in when he got the call. The fastball characteristics were something that a lot of people liked. Full arsenal, slider, curveball, changeup in addition to that. And he hasn't shown us a ton at the major league level, but I've remained pretty interested in Birdsong. Obviously, this performance makes us much more interested. The problem is we usually think about and talk about Coors Field as, well, if a guy struggles there, you can just write it off, Coors Field. But I think it works both ways, because it's not just that the ball travels farther when players make contact with it at Coors Field. The ball moves differently out of pitchers' hands. This is a part of why it's been so hard for the Rockies to develop pitchers, is figuring out guys who can pitch effectively at Coors Field and away from Coors Field is really, really difficult. And so, we saw a similar thing with Frankie Montas earlier in the season. Remember, his best start of the year arguably came at Coors Field. And it was a similar thing where he completely changed his pitch mix, started throwing his slider a bunch and got a bunch of whiffs with it. And that proved to be a total fluke. So I think it's worth being skeptical of Birdsong. However, this tied him with, I believe, Dylan Cease for the most whiffs by a starter in a start this season. And it is like the 20th most of anyone over the past 5 seasons, 27 whiffs. This is not like, you look at the list of guys, there really aren't any flukes on this list. There are some like Lucas Giolito starts, and he's not like a great. Patrick Sandoval, I guess, is the closest. He had a 32 whiff game back in 2021. I don't know if you guys remember that. Don't know why you would.
I do.
I do. That's probably the closest to just an outright fluke on this list of guys who have had at least that many whiffs. So yeah, I don't want to dismiss it. I added Hayden Birdsong in one league so far where waivers ran. It was a $41 bid out of 1,000. The backup bid was $9. So I overspent by $32, $30. But yeah, I'm interested.
I think there's a bigger, like before we even get into the conversation of how good is Hayden Birdsong, really, a little bird told me, or you might even say sang to me, this is Hayden Birdsong's last start. Could be wrong, but Robbie Ray's done with his rehab assignment, Alex Cobb, I think maybe has one. So if you want to say, oh, well, they're going to kick out, what's the lefty's name? The big
Kyle Harrison.
Kyle Harrison. Yeah. If they want, even if you're going to say they're going to kick out Kyle Harrison before they'd kick out Birdsong, you got Alex Cobb following Robbie Ray off the IL. So I don't know who else would be out. Maybe they go 6-man for a while. I don't know.
Jordan Hicks.
Would they consider it as a way to manage Jordan Hicks's innings?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I guess that's possible. By the way, Robbie Ray, his last 2 rehab starts, he struck out 16 and allowed just 2 hits in 10 in the 3rd innings. Yep. Yeah. But getting back to Birdsong, that would be my biggest hesitation in picking him up beyond just, I got a spot to play with. Let's see how this goes. To further your point about Coors Field, his horizontal break was down on both his curveball and slider. So as effective as they were, they played like different pitches, and maybe they mixed with his other pitches better with less break like that, and that allowed him to rack up so many whiffs. His changeup, which had been his best swing and miss pitch this year, he threw it only 4% of the time, usually 18%. So he just ditched that. It was very different for Hayden Birdsong. So even if you want to be optimistic and say, okay, he's going to find a way to stay in the rotation, look at his minor league strikeout rates. They're very good. I still think we can't really get excited until we see how the next start goes, which, like I said, I can't even be sure when that's going to happen.
And I mean, just based on the way things line up right now, it looks like his next start would come against the Rockies again, this time in San Francisco. So if that remains, if
I would start
line up that way, yeah, if you need a pitcher for this week, I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. So only 13% rostered is Hayden Birdsong, and we will compare him to other waiver wire pitchers in just a little bit. But wanted to remind everyone to sign up for the FBT newsletter. If you haven't already, you could scan the QR code that will take you right to the website, where you click on the FBT logo, you punch in your email address, and it's easy as that. You will get a FBT newsletter delivered right to your inbox every single weekday for free. Let's take our first break, and when we return, lots of news, lots of injuries. We'll talk about it right after this.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Welcome back in, Scott. I am sorry. A rough weekend of injuries for your Atlanta Braves. First up, Ozzie Albies suffered a left wrist fracture and will miss approximately 8 weeks, which takes us up to late September. So I assume in any leagues with no IL spots, NFBC leagues, Ozzie Albies is a drop, right?
I mean, it might even be a drop in leagues with IL spots, depending who you already have occupying those IL spots, because I mean, the given timetable is 8 weeks. It's not 6 to 8 weeks. It's 8 weeks. So I assume that's the most optimistic scenario. And even if he does come back for the start of the second to last week of the season, are you going to want to have him active then? And then is your league even playing out the last week of the season? So I'm, unless it's just a free IL spot, I think I'm basically out on Albies for this year.
And if you do need a second base replacement, an Albies replacement, Scott's Week 18 sleepers are live on the site for this upcoming week. That's going to start again on Monday. Some second basemen on the list: Zach Geloff, Joey Ortiz, and Thairo Estrada. Who is replacing Albies for the Braves? They are expected to promote prospect Nacho Alvarez, and his name is actually Ignacio Alvarez if you're looking for him on CBS. He's 21 years old, a fifth-round pick from back in 2022. This season in the minors, hit .291 with 7 homers, 21 steals, and .818 OPS between AA and AAA. He actually got a lot better once he was promoted up to AAA. Only 3% rostered. Scott, what do we need to know about Alvarez? Were you looking to add him in any deeper leagues?
Yeah, 15 teams or deeper. Those are the sort of leagues where you can't afford to wait and see. You just have to go for it. I would say the typical fantasy player can wait and see on Ignacio or Nacho Alvarez. When I look into him, I'm reminded a lot of Vaughn Grissom, actually. because the minor league numbers are very good, especially the batting average, but there's power, there's speed there. And you're like, wow, why is this guy not being hyped to the hills? And you dig into he doesn't hit the ball very hard at all. Max and exit velocity both low. His speed ratings are not very good for all the stolen bases he has. And that is all very much in line with Vaughn Grissom, who I think it's fair to say at this point has been a pretty big disappointment in fantasy. I think a good scenario for Nacho Alvarez would be to stick with Braves comps here. It would be Martin Prado, high batting average guy who hits double-digit home runs more years than not, can get to double-digit steals. And that would be a worthy player in fantasy, but that's probably the best scenario for Alvarez, and whether or not he can do that as a rookie down the stretch here, I'm not as confident in that. You mentioned he got a lot better at AAA. All 7 of his home runs came at AAA and only 1/3 of his season. But International League is regarded as hitter friendly right now, and that may have contributed that too. The readings aren't good. The power, the usual indicators of power are not that good for Alvarez. So
yeah, max exit velo is around 107 miles per hour. Average is 87, which isn't terrible. Like for context, Jacob Wilson, I think, was like 84, 85. So he's a little better than that at AAA, and is doing a little better job hitting the ball to the pull side. He's been very all fields heavy throughout his career, and that's led to very good batting averages for the most part. But I think the general idea is right, that it's probably not a difference making profile, but really good on base guy. Whatever pop is there, I think is probably below average, but over a course of a season, 10 to 15, might not be an unreasonable expectation. He does have 21 steals in 85 games or 75 games this season. That's notable. He had 16 and 116 last year. I do think it depends on getting to like 20 steal pace to really matter, but
yeah,
I don't know. I could see like maybe Joey Ortiz type of impact as a rookie, where it's like a useful player, not a difference maker, not a superstar, but someone who can be useful for fantasy, especially in an OBP league. I think especially like an OBP categories league is definitely Nacho Alvarez's best format.
Yeah, and I actually picked him up in Tout Wars, which is 5x5 roto with OBP. Scott, I know you picked him up as well. I picked him up for around 5% of my budget. You picked him up for 7%.
7%. And it was like in both of our leagues, and these are 15-team roto leagues, right? So deeper into the spectrum. Only one other person even bid, and they bid a single-digit number. We bid $50, $70.
I mean, that's just the way things are. Like that might just be that people didn't even have double-digit bids left. I'm at a fab in one league.
Hey, you can't take the money with you, Chris. So I get it. Lots of pitching injuries coming out of the All-Star break as well. Sticking with the Braves, Max Fried went on the IL with left forearm neuritis, and manager Brian Snitker said Sunday that an MRI cleared Fried of any soft tissue damage. Even with that, this is pretty scary because he missed almost 3 months last year with a strained left forearm, and obviously bad timing for anybody involved, the Braves fantasy players, but Max Fried is in a contract year too, so it's just all around a pretty bad injury for him. Scott, any thought as to like who's taking a spot? Is it just Bryce Elder for now until?
Well, Bryce Elder maybe until Ian Anderson shows he's ready. He's up at AAA now. Just came off the IL in the minors. It's been up and down the rehab stint. The changeup apparently looks good, but having the usual control issues you see from pitchers coming back from Tommy John surgery. So I don't think Ian Anderson would be an immediate choice. Probably they'd go Elder first, but it's a name to keep in the back of your mind if Fried does end up missing an extended period of time. And he may not. There was no structural damage found. He pitched an inning in the All-Star game, so it's not like he was feeling bad going into that. It may not be a long-term absence for Fried here, but they're not really offering a timetable either.
So among 11 players who have missed time with neuritis of some sort, I guess 10 who have missed time with elbow or ulnar neuritis. One was carpal tunnel, so I don't think that plays into this, but so there have been 10. 4 of the 10 over the past 7 seasons. This is per Baseball Prospectus recovery dashboard tool. 4 of them have missed 13 days or fewer. This is pitchers. Then you have like Jeffrey Springs last year, who had ulnar neuritis, but that was caused by the torn ligament that ultimately required Tommy John surgery. So I don't think that is comparable here. You have, looks like the average or maybe the median amount of time missed is about a month, but you do have a couple of guys who missed 140, 150 days. And you have a couple of guys who missed 10, including Jordan Romano, right around the beginning of the 2021 season. So I don't know how, I think ultimately the thing with nerve issues is it just depends on what caused it. Like it's not the nerve issue itself that's as big of a concern as the underlying issue. And if the MRI came back clean, then you would assume that he's okay and it's nothing to be too concerned about. But because of that forearm injury last year, it's hard not to be concerned.
Other pitchers who went on the IL this weekend: Ryan Pepio with a right knee infection, Reese Olson with a right shoulder strain, Chris Paddock with a right forearm strain, and Hayden Wesneski also with a right forearm strain.
I do want to point out, I don't know if the Tigers are ready, but if you're the type of person who stashes minor leaguers, Jackson Jobe is by all accounts the best pitching prospect in baseball. It might not even be close at this point, really. Scott, I know you had him top 5 in your midseason update, right?
Oh, I had him number 1.
If
we were excluding guys who've appeared in the majors already, because I had like James Wood and Jackson Holiday, Junior Caminero ahead of him. But,
he is. I don't know where Paul Skeens was before the season. Is that overstating it?
Well, I mean, the description sounds a little like Paul Skeens, or I mean, Spencer Strider's an overused comparison, but like he gets a ton of whiffs on a fastball up in the zone that pushes triple digits. He's got a slider with 3,000 RPM, which is crazy. And
the changeup is apparently a really good pitch too. Yeah,
and he controls it all.
Yeah.
So he's hardly pitched this year, and he's at Double-A. But I feel like it's. I'm not the only one who feels this way, but pitchers, especially pitchers with just uber talent like that, have a much easier time breaking into the league right now. I mean, obviously we've seen it with Paul Skeens.
You only got so many bullets.
Yeah, and the Tigers are really close to contention, and maybe want to see if Jobe can be a part of that next year. So I saw that on he was the cover photo of your waiver wire article, and yeah, I put in a bid on Jobe and a couple of my 15 teamers just because I got a bench spot for it. Why not? I presume Matt Manning would fill an opening there, but they have a couple. If unless they're planning to move Kenta Maeda back into the rotation, they have a couple openings. So maybe Jobe is someone they could consider. I don't think it's foolhardy to take a stab at that, just in case, because the competition for him is going to be much stiffer if it is announced.
And Jackson Jobe is 30% rostered on CBS. I would inform people, even if you play in a keeper league, like my home league is you keep 4 players year over year. I have Jackson Jobe stashed just in case I want to keep him for next year. So obviously dynasty leagues, he's already rostered, but if you play in a keeper league where you keep anywhere more than like 3-4 players, I would just pick him up and maybe you have a keeper for next season as well. Julio Rodriguez exited Sunday after crashing into the outfield wall, and it looked pretty bad. So hopefully it doesn't sound, too bad as of now. He underwent x-rays on his right ankle, which came back negative. Manager Scott Service said J-Rod is day-to-day with a little bit of an ankle sprain. So we'll have to check back in, learn more heading into Monday.
Yeah, I don't want to armchair diagnose or anything. It looked a lot worse than just a day-to-day thing when it happened. He did walk off the field under his own power, but ankle injuries can take a few hours to really know the extent of them. So I probably wouldn't start Julio Rodriguez unless we get a really good update on Monday.
Zach Wheeler is scheduled to start Tuesday against the Twins. He missed his final start before the All-Star break due to back spasms. His teammate Ranger Suarez will start Monday against the Twins. He also missed his final start before the break with back tightness. Tyler Glasnow will return from the IL to start Wednesday against the Giants. He was also on the IL with a back injury. Are you guys good getting all three of these back in your lineups? Wheeler, Suarez, Glasnow.
Yep.
Yeah. Especially, Suarez would be most questionable about, but he makes 2 starts. So got to do it.
Kyle Tucker participated in, quote, intense defensive drills Saturday and is working his way back from that shin injury.
By the way, I did finally see a quote that it was like some kind of stress fracture for Kyle Tucker. I know we've talked about this a lot, but it does appear there was a quote from their manager that said that it was some kind of fracture. So that makes more sense, I guess.
Certainly does. Mookie Betts played Catch Friday, his first time doing so since fracturing his left hand. Mike Trout has been facing live pitching at the Angels Spring Training Complex and is expected to start a rehab assignment at AAA on Monday. He could return later on in the week. He's been out since April 30th with a torn meniscus in his left knee. Yoshinobu Yamamoto said on Sunday that he's been playing catch out to 200 feet, but he has yet to receive clearance for mound work and admitted he's without a clear timeline to return. He also said his goal is to return this season and that he isn't feeling any discomfort in his shoulder. Bo Bichette was placed in the IL with a right calf strain for the second time this season. An MRI revealed the strain is moderate and he'll likely miss multiple weeks. And it's already felt this way, but even more so now, it just really feels like a lost season here for Bo Bichette.
I thought he was a candidate to be moved at the deadline, but I doubt that's going to happen now because he'll still be on the IL when the trade deadline comes.
Can I just bone bruise, not fracture for Kyle Tucker? I got confused.
Okay. Carlos Correa was placed in the IL with right plantar fasciitis, which is worrisome because this is something Correa has a history of. Edouard Julien was recalled and started both Saturday and Sunday. In the minors, Julien was batting .233 with 5 homers, 4 steals, 780 OPS. So I don't think there's much interest there outside of, deeper category leagues. JT Realmuto was activated from the IL Saturday. He's been out since June 11th after undergoing a right meniscus surgery. Clayton Kershaw will make his season debut Thursday against the Giants. He built up to 67 pitches in his final rehab start on Friday. He allowed 3 runs over 4 innings. He's up to 80% rostered. First start back, my guess is we want to play it safe with Clayton Kershaw, right?
Yes. I wouldn't start.
Yeah. Well, him and the next guy here, who's also coming back this week.
And that would be Kodai Senga, who had a rough rehab outing at AAA this weekend. He allowed 5 runs on 8 hits over 3 innings. After the start, he did say his body feels good, and it sounds like he will return this Friday against the Braves. So
yeah, you just see how the returns for Gerrit Cole and Max Scherzer have gone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gavin Williams,
Gavin Williams, yeah.
Shane Baz even hasn't been great.
Right. But one's as high end as Cole and Scherzer, if that didn't go seamlessly. As high end and as stable as they've always been, then I think you got to play it safe for Kershaw and Senga coming back from long-term injuries too.
And speaking of Max Scherzer, he left to start after 2 innings on Saturday with arm fatigue. He allowed 4 runs with just 1 strikeout. His fastball was down 1.3 miles per hour. He did share optimism after the start, said his removal was just precautionary. But at 39 years old, I think it's fair to wonder if Scherzer's body can just hold up anymore. He missed the first 3 months with back, thumb, forearm injuries.
Wasn't there something
arm fatigue
similar with arm fatigue in one of his earlier starts too?
Yeah,
if I'm remembering correctly.
I think that was they mentioned a forearm thing that was going on. So, I assume we don't want to start Scherzer this week either, right?
I think at this point, anything you get from Max Scherzer the rest of the way is a bonus.
Yeah. Kenley Jansen will not travel with the Red Sox to Colorado as a result of his pre-existing heart condition. Brennan Bernardino and Zach Kelly could see save opportunities in his absence. Robbie Ray, who we mentioned, made another rehab start on Friday, this time at AAA. He looked fantastic. 5 1/3 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. He's 62% rostered. Is he climbing up the list, Scott? Of I know these, these IL stashes and Springs and Kershaw and
I mean, it sounds like that was supposed to be his last rehab start. So he'll be making. They haven't said what day he'll start, I don't think, but he's supposed to start this week, and you'd rather pick him up before that start than have it be a good start and have to compete for him. So yeah, I would say so. He's had his ups and downs over his career, obviously, but the good years have been Cy Young caliber and with a ton of strikeouts. So yeah, I think you got to make a play for Robbie Ray right now.
Jacob deGrom threw a bullpen on Friday and mixed in some sliders. This was his third bullpen session as he works his way back from Tommy John surgery. Yandy Diaz was placed on the restricted list while he tends to a personal matter. Curtis Mead was recalled by the Rays. Poor Jacob Wilson, man. He got called up on Friday, immediately hurt his hamstring. He was placed in the IL Sunday with a left hamstring strain. Joe Musgrove threw 30 pitches in a bullpen session Saturday, his second bullpen since going on the IL. Justin Verlander threw 40 pitches during a bullpen on Saturday. He's been out since June 18th with a neck injury. Evan Carter will take batting practice on the field at Globe Life Field on Tuesday. He's been out since May 28th with a lower back stress reaction. Evan Carter, 68% rostered. Any interest in stashing Carter?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All
I
right.
still have hope that he can be an impact player. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's become less and less of a priority for me as other players have gotten hurt. But yeah, I mean, obviously I liked him a lot coming in. Part of it is like he stopped starting against left-handers.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder if you're going to be able to, when you move him out of that IL spot onto your bench, how long you're going to be able to keep him there. But if you got the roster spot to play with, Evan Carter could come around in the second half, sure.
The Yankees will likely decide on a return date for Giancarlo Stanton by the end of this upcoming week. He ran the bases on Friday, his first time doing so since suffering a left hamstring strain. Ty France was placed on waivers by the Mariners, and Josiah Gray will undergo season-ending surgery Wednesday to repair a partial tear of the UCL in his right elbow. Okay, lots of news, lots of injuries. That is done. Let's take our final break, and when we return, the rest of this weekend's action right after this. Welcome back in. Let's talk waiver wire pitchers. And first up, some names in shallower leagues. Brandon Pfaadt was great at the Cubs. 7 shutout innings, 1 hit, 1 walk with 7 strikeouts. Matt Waldron turned in another quality start. This time he was at the Guardians. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts there. Michael Wacha, dominant against the White Sox. He threw 7 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. Kyle Gibson, a quality start at the Braves. 6 2/3, 1 run with 6 strikeouts. And Andrew Heaney continues to pitch well, this time up against the Orioles. He threw 5 shutout with 4 strikeouts. Over his last 6 starts, Heaney has a 2.43 ERA and a 1.08 whip. Scott, who are your 3 favorites from this group of shallow league pitchers? Heaney, Gibson, Wacha, Waldron, and Brandon Pfaadt.
I think I still got to go Waldron number 1 here.
Mm-hmm.
Pfaadt, I'll put him number 2. He's been great lately, combined 2 earned runs in his last 4 starts, and the strikeouts have been decent too. And then I'm going to go Wacha number 3, who has also been very steady, 2 earned runs or less in, I think, 9 of his last 10, and the other one was he gave up 3 earned runs. So he's not exciting, Michael Wacha, but he's just very steady and has been that way for a few years now. I like the direction Heaney's trending, getting more whiffs on the slider, throwing the slider harder. Although it wasn't quite as hard in this start, though, even though the results were good, it wasn't as hard as, it had been up like 1 mile per hour and a half, and it was more like 0.8 in this start. So hopefully that doesn't mean that he's reverting. But Andrew Heaney, is not a 2-star pitcher anymore. Remember, I was hyping him as a 2-star pitcher in Week 18, White Sox, Blue Jays. Turns out he started this weekend, so now it's just Blue Jays next week. But I still like the direction Heaney's trending, even though he wasn't one of the top 3 in this group for me.
And where would you put Robbie Ray on this list?
Oh, that's a good question. If it's a shallow league, probably number 1, because I want as much impact as possible. If you're thinking deeper, where any of these guys you couldn't justify dropping them really, I'll put Waldron ahead. I'll put Fott ahead. I'll put Waka ahead. I'll put him 4th. I'll put him behind those 3.
Yeah, I think the way I'd put it with this whole group, maybe with the exception of Waldron, who threw his knuckleball 60% of the time. I don't know why he doesn't do that every time. He had been kind of trending back down with the knuckleball usage before this. With the exception of Waldron, though, I kind of think my answer to who I like best out of this group is just who has the best matchups in their next game or 2. Because I don't necessarily know if any of Fott, Waka, Gibson, or Heaney are like must roster guys you're going to start against anyone moving forward. So it might just be matchup plays across the board.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of matchups, Matt Waldron gets the Nationals this week, so that's a pretty good matchup for him. Brandon Fott gets the Pirates, so another good matchup there. Waka gets the D-backs. That's a little bit tougher, so I probably would favor the other 2 if you're just looking at matchups for this week. Impressive outings from 3 young pitchers. We already spoke about one of them with Hayden Birdsong. Drew Thorpe has turned in 5 quality starts in a row. He was at the Royals where he threw 6 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts. He had 18 whiffs on 97 pitches. The first time we really saw his slider look dominant. It was pretty good in this start. We already spoke about Birdsong. And then Luis Ortiz of the Pirates. He continues to pitch well. He was up against the Phillies. He threw 7 shutout innings with just 2 strikeouts. He had 8 whiffs on 89 pitches. But last 5 games for Ortiz, which includes 4 starts, a 1.01 ERA, a .79 whip, keeping the walks down, getting ground balls. I'm mildly interested in Luis Ortiz. Chris, how would you rank this group of impressive youngsters? Ortiz, Birdsong, and Drew Thorpe.
Birdsong, and then kind of meh on Thorpe and Ortiz. I don't really see much to be impressed by with either Ortiz or Thorpe. I will say, okay, Thorpe, the slider was really good in this one.
Yeah.
And he got 7 whiffs with it. That is a total outlier. The story on Thorpe coming up as a prospect and through his first 5 starts, changeup is awesome and everything else is pretty mediocre. He had a 17% whiff rate with his slider. I didn't look up if that was the worst among anyone who has thrown any number of sliders this season, but it's probably pretty close. So unless that's real, and I don't really have much reason to think it is, I tend to think that Drew Thorpe is going to be pretty mediocre moving forward.
Would you put Birdsong, where would you rank him amongst the previous group?
4th, 5th, if we're counting Ray. I think I would take him over Gibson and Heaney, but probably behind Waldron, Fott, and Waka. And that's mostly like, I think the likeliest outcome is Gibson and Heaney are more useful moving forward. I just think they're only going to be useful. They're not going to be much more than that. And so I'd rather take a chance. The Hayden Birdsong figured something out and can carry that forward rather than we know what Kyle Gibson is. Andrew Heaney, we pretty much know what he is. The slider is a one variable for him, but for the most part, yeah, I'd rather take the chance on him unlocking some upside.
Luis Ortiz, I will just point out, has RP eligibility. So if you play in a head-to-head points league, he is a SPARP and obviously could have some value in those formats. Would you be willing to drop either of these pitchers? Mackenzie Gore, he's had a rough go recently, allowed 3 runs over 2 innings. He had 4 walks to 2 strikeouts against the Reds. He's still 82% rostered. And Christian Scott at the Marlins obviously was a good matchup and did not come through. 4 innings, 3 runs allowed. He's up to a 4.56 ERA, a 1.20 whip. Scott, where are you at? Are you all right dropping either Gore or Christian Scott?
Yeah, I think so. Scott is an easier call because it's not like he's even getting strikeouts. He did get 7 whiffs on his fastball in this one, which was encouraging because he seems like the kind of pitcher who has to get whiffs on his fastball. but the overall result against the Marlins still wasn't good. So it's hard to care about it that much. And Gore, it's like I really like the upside of Gore.
I'm so disappointed.
He's just unusable right now. He's just walking way too many guys. It's 12 walks in his last 3 starts. His ERA on the year is 4.20 now. His WHIP is 1.46. It really doesn't matter how many strikeouts you're getting. I mean, his outings have been so short. Dave Martinez, the Nationals manager, says his delivery has gotten too rotational. So they may be able to get in the lab and straighten him out. But you know, if it's keeping me from picking up somebody I really want to pick up, I'd probably be willing to let Gore go.
Yeah, the key there, I think the wind up or delivery. He's got a really complex delivery. It's very Clayton Kershaw-esque. And that's kind of the only comp, right? Like there's not a lot of guys that pitch that way. And Gore's prospect days were completely derailed when he lost his delivery for a year or two. So I'm hopeful that he can figure it out. I think the upside is clear, but his velocity has trended down all season. I'm guessing the mechanics are off right now. And if you can't use a guy right now, there's not that much point in hanging on to them unless you've got, deep benches.
Any interest in these two names in deeper leagues? Ryan Nelson, a strong start at the Cubs. He went 5 2/3. He allowed 1 run with 9 strikeouts. And Kyle Freeland turned in another quality start. And in 5 starts since returning from the IL, a 1.95 ERA and a 1.05 WHIP. Any interest in deeper leagues? Ryan Nelson, Kyle Freeland.
I thought about picking up Freeland with the matchup on the road this week in one league, but I'm not like super excited about it.
Remember that start Kyle Freeland had on opening day?
Oh, I remember.
When he was lined up for 2 favorable starts, I think it was. And
give up 10 runs?
I started him in NL only. Yeah, I'm not even willing to try it. I'm not willing to try it. He's been going well, but I've been too sanguine about Kyle Freeland in the past, and it's been disastrous for me.
Let's talk waiver wire hitters, and we will begin with outfielders. Jorge Soler launched the longest home run in baseball this season on Sunday. He went 2 for 4 with his 11th homer, 478 feet, and he is Scott's top sleeper hitter for this upcoming week, 58% rostered. With 8 games is Jorge Soler. Lars Nootbaar starting off the second half with some solid games this weekend, 3 for 7 with a steal across the doubleheader on Saturday. He added his 7th home run on Sunday, and Lawrence Butler continues to hit. He went 2 for 4 with 2 RBI on Friday, 3 for 4 with 3 RBI on Saturday, and so far in July, Lawrence Butler batting .385 with 7 homers, 22 RBI already, and a 1324 OPS. Scott, how would you rank these 3? Maybe just for this upcoming week, and I guess if we're just thinking long-term for the rest of the season. Soler, Nootbaar, and Butler.
For the upcoming week, I have Soler and Butler among my 10 sleeper hitters. I don't have Nootbaar among them, so I guess he'd be 3rd. Rest of season, gosh, I'm not sure. They're in a range of outfield rankings where I don't actually care that much. Nootbaar feels the safest, particularly in points leagues. But I mean, Butler might just be
Butler
breaking out. He might not be. Like he's the most volatile of these 3, the least proven of these 3. But the 7 homers in 12 games heading into the All-Star break, and then I think it was 3 multi-hit games this weekend. He's sitting against left-handers is Lawrence Butler, so that's something that may hold him back unless he just gets so hot that they start playing him against left-handers. There's only 1 on the schedule this week, and the Athletics have the second best hitter matchup. So I think if you don't make a play for Butler now, you might not get another chance.
And we don't think that with Abraham Toro coming back from the IL that they're going to go away from Lawrence Butler as the leadoff hitter, right? With how good he's been, I think he's going to stick there. So that would keep. I think in Roto, it's clearly Butler just for the upside. He's so tooled up that I want to take a chance on that upside, even if there's a decent chance things go really wrong at some point.
Let's talk some other waiver wire hitter decisions. Tyler Stevenson has hit for some power here in July. He went 1 for 2 with his 11th home run on Saturday. He has 5 home runs and a 931 OPS in the month. Tyler Stevenson, 54% rostered. In a one-catcher league, would you guys be all right dropping Sean Murphy for Tyler Stevenson?
Sure.
Yeah, I think Murphy might be catcher 2 now for the Braves.
Mm-hmm. What about Ryan Jeffers for Stevenson? Yeah.
I think any of these guys, when you're talking about a low-end catcher 1, just play a hot hand until you find someone to stick with.
Yeah.
Right.
So I assume you do it for David Fry as well.
That would be tougher in a categories league. But I do think Stevenson's just going to be the better hitter. Yeah.
Zach Neto continues his fine season, 3 for 4 with his 13th home run on Friday. He went 1 for 3 with 2 more steals on Saturday. And overall, he's batting .260. He's got 13 homers, 16 steals. He's 57% rostered. Definitely makes sense as a Carlos Correa replacement if you lost him, or if you need a middle infielder and you lost Ozzie Albies. Zach Neto makes some sense. If you play in a shallower league, would you drop someone like Dansby Swanson for Zach Neto?
I mean, I guess we're at the point where you could think it. Like, it wouldn't at all surprise me if Dansby Swanson just had an awesome final 2 months because of his track record. But at this point, you got to take what you can get.
Here's the problem with that question, though. What shallow league is it where, 1, Dansby Swanson's someone you're starting, and 2, where Zach Neto's worth starting in that league as well? Because the shallowest leagues are going to be points leagues, and Zach Neto's not going to be a great option there.
Right.
Well, to be fair, Neto's 58% rostered. Swanson is 76% rostered, or 78% rostered. So it's close. There's a 20% of leagues out there, more or less.
Yeah,
you could make that exchange if you wanted to.
And on Yahoo, which I think are mostly head-to-head category leagues, and typically a shallower format as well. There's no middle, there's no corner. You start 3 outfielders. Swanson is 65% rostered, and Zach Neto's 39%. So
that's what I was thinking. Is just like, what if you're in a 15-team league? Maybe you're starting them at shortstop, but you'd have to be. I guess you'd have to have had some pretty bad injuries and not picked anyone up. Like maybe you stuck with Bo Bichette or something and just don't have anyone else. That's kind of but yeah, it's a weird fit for Neto is what I'm trying to say.
Jake Berger might be heating up. 3 home runs in his past 5 games. Last 18, he's batting .296 with 6 home runs and 13 RBI. He's 49% rostered. I assume Jake Berger would still be behind guys like Michael Busch and Mark Vientos, Colt Keith, names like that, right? Who are also pretty hot right now.
Yeah, but it could flip pretty quickly. I think Vientos, I'm going to give the longest leash to of that group. But if Busch cools off, which we've certainly seen before, who are some of the other ones you mentioned there?
Vientos, Busch, Colt Keith. Noelvi Marte is actually off to a slow start.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if it's a shallow league, you probably don't even roster Marte right now. But if it's a deeper league, I might want to hold on to him for the upside, which I think is considerable. Yeah, I think Busch and Keith and Berger, whoever's the hottest hand of that group, is probably the one I'm going to prefer. But they're all hot right now. So
I will just note, like, slow start is being really generous for Noelvi Marte.
Yeah,
he's hitting 171.
He's been bad, yeah.
He hit 151 in the minors as well.
Was it Sunday? He hit a home run one day this weekend.
I think it was Sunday. Yeah. But he's been 40 strikeouts to 2 walks in 31 games between the majors and minors so far. It's been real rough.
It's been rough for sure.
Yep. Again, that was Noelvi Marte. If you need speed in a categories league, Jacob Young picked up 4 steals this weekend. He's up to 24 on the season. Outside of that, it's pretty empty stats. He does chip in some runs scored, but Jacob Young is 34% rostered. Some names in deeper leagues who had some big weekends. Andrew McCutchen, Juan Yepez, Max Schumann, Alec Thomas, Eddie Rosario, and another name if you need speed in a much deeper league, Mike Ciani of the Cardinals. Do any of these names stand out, Chris? Ciani, Eddie Rosario, Alec Thomas. Max Schumann, Juan Yepez, and Andrew McCutcheon.
I have added Juan Yepez in a few leagues. They're 15 teamers, so it would have to be that deep. But like, this is a guy who has had some interesting minor league numbers, puts the bat on the ball. He's hitting 13 straight games, had 4 multi-hit games in a row between or sandwiched around the All-Star game, I believe. So he's pretty interesting in a 15-team context. And there is one name that is not listed here, and I don't know why you don't like Victor Robles, but he might actually
There are no reasons.
he might actually play a decent amount for the Mariners if Julio Rodriguez has to miss some time, and he's showing signs of life. He's got 6 steals in 45 plate appearances, so I added him in one 15-team league. Just for speed for the most part, but I think I'd rather take a chance on that than Jacob Young. I don't know. Maybe that's off base, but
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
I was just bemoaning that I dropped Jacob Young in a 12-team Roto League because he had been in kind of a stolen base drought, and I was like, well, what's he good for if he's not going to steal bases? And then he straight out of the break has back-to-back 2 steal games, and yeah, I should have dropped that guy. He could carry you in the category. You know he's going to play for the Nationals.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
All right. What do we do with these pitchers? Some that are just inconsistent performers recently. Zach Gallen, 5 shutout innings this weekend, but he had 6 walks, which tied a career high to only 4 strikeouts. And he has struggled in 4 July starts, a 6.50 ERA, a 1.89 whip for Zach Gallen. He's home against the Pirates this week, so I assume we're starting him. But any actual concern with what's going on with Zach Gallen?
I mean, it doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
he was out with a hamstring injury, so you wouldn't think it's a problem with his arm. But remember, the velocity was way up when he first came back. And now he's been doing strange things with his pitch selection, through his changeup 31% of the time in this one, and usually only uses it 12% of the time. And, it was his second best start since coming back, but he walked 6 through only 53% of his pitches were strikes, which is clearly not good. And so, like, it just kind of seems all over the place. Like, he doesn't know what he wants to do. Does Zach Gallen. So yeah, you probably start him against the Pirates, but if that doesn't go well, then it might be panic time in terms of just stick him on your bench for a while.
Yep.
All right. Sonny Gray had a weird start at the Braves, 7 innings, 5 runs allowed, but he had 10 strikeouts and 0 walks. He also allowed 4 home runs in that start. He had 15 whiffs on 87 pitches. And Sonny Gray in his first 5 starts this season had a .89 ERA, a .86 whip. In 13 starts after that, he has a 4.60 ERA, a 1.14 whip. It also comes with a 3.42 FIP and a 2.83 xFIP. So I think there's maybe been some bad luck here with Sonny Gray. He's home against the Nationals this week. I think you're starting him. But Chris, we're going on, 2-3 months now where Sonny Gray has an ERA in the mid-4s.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 2 really bad starts in the middle of May. Then he was pretty good for about a month and a half. And then the past 4 have been really bad. And, when you dig into the numbers, there's nothing specific that, like, there's not one simple trick to getting Sonny Gray back on track. Like, if you look at the pitch by pitch data in the month of July, he has an expected WOBA of 350 or higher on on 5 of his 6 pitches. I think the changeup is the only one where he doesn't have an xWOBA above 350. Before July, he hadn't had a pitch with an xWOBA above 350 except for his 4-seamer. So I think it's just a slump, and he'll probably be fine. Like, this was the first start where homers were really an issue. Obviously, they were a big issue. But he's still getting a ton of strikeouts, so I'm not too worried.
Entered with 8 home runs surrendered all season, and then he gave up 4 in this one. And he's more of a ground ball pitcher, is Sonny Gray. So there were several pitchers who just got gave up so many home runs this weekend. And some of them you could see it a little more than for Sonny Gray. Like I said, more of a ground ball pitcher. But I think we're just going to see more of these starts in general with the ball suddenly playing like it is, where there's not much a pitcher can do. He just gets burned by home runs because home runs are happening again.
Yeah. Shout out to Cutter Crawford and Nestor Cortez, who gave up a bunch of home runs this weekend as well.
Yeah, I mean, Cutter Crawford I'm especially worried about because he is one of the most fly ball prone pitchers in baseball. It's great when the ball's not carrying well, but well, we saw how it went for him in this one.
Yeah. Let's go over to another Red Sox pitcher, Nick Pivetta, who was dominant at the Dodgers this weekend. He threw 6 shutout innings with 8 strikeouts, had 14 whiffs on 90 pitches. He has 8+ strikeouts in all 3 July starts. But he is at Coors Field this week. He's 52% started. What are you guys doing with Nick Pivetta?
I mean, one, it's Nick Pivetta. Like, oh, Nick Pavetta's doing poorly. Oh, Nick Pavetta's doing well. Yeah, that's Nick Pivetta, man. That's just what he does, baby. As far as like starting him against the Rockies, I would probably try to avoid that. But the one thing I will point out is he has thrown the sweeper 32.2% of the time so far in July. It was below 20% in June. Remember, that was the pitch that he started throwing. He only threw it like 12% of the time in the second half last year. But that really played a big part in his emergence, and it's been really, really good all of a sudden. 39% whiff rate, ex-WOBA down to 209 for the season, easily the best marks of any of his pitches. So I think being optimistic about Nick Pivetta moving forward makes sense. If you don't want to trust him at Coors Field, I think that is perfectly reasonable as well.
I am team Nick Pivetta again. I mean, one thing we haven't talked about much is the control gains from last year. He's still been a really good control pitcher. In fact, if I were to tell you K- BB rate, he is 8th in that. And the 7 names ahead of Nick Pivetta: Garrett Crochet, Jack Flaherty, Chris Sale, Tyler Glasnow, Tarek Skubal, Sonny Gray, Dylan Cease. It's like who's who of Cy Young contenders. And then you got Nick Pivetta right after that. And then after Pivetta, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, George Kirby, Freddie Peralta, Cole
That
Reagans.
sounds more like the group that Nick Pivetta belongs in.
No, George Kirby, Cole Reagans.
I mean, no, there's some really good pitchers in there, too.
I'm saying they're all really good.
But
Pablo
there's also
Lopez has
some
had
guys,
trouble with home runs, but otherwise, we
Joe
like
Ryan.
what he's doing.
Joe Ryan has
Joe
trouble with
Ryan's
home
good.
runs.
Everybody has Joe Ryan as a top 25 pitcher.
Nobody's saying he's not good. It's just, things can tend to go wrong for these guys.
Fair enough. Let's talk about 4 hitters who have been pretty hot over the past month or so. And Randy Arozarena flashed some of that power this weekend up against Nestor Cortez. 4 for 5 with a double dong on Saturday, 1 for 4 with another homer on Sunday. And since the start of June, he's batting .292 with 7 home runs, 7 steals, and OPS over 900. So kind of feels like Randy Arozarena is just back. We already spoke about Jackson Chourio. Byron Buxton continues his hot hitting. Last 17 games, a .419 batting average, 7 homers, 20 runs scored, and 17 RBI. And George Springer, over the past 22 games, he's batting .372 with 8 home runs, 25 RBI, and an OPS over 1,100. Anything to add on Springer, Buxton, and Arozarena?
I thought Springer's good stretch started before late June, but I guess not. Yeah, it's only been about the past 20 or so games. But I still, I think I think all these guys are more or less going to be very useful moving forward. Arozarena, Buxton, and Springer, if they all played the same amount of games, I'd probably rank Springer last. But obviously Buxton's injury history is hard to overlook. But I think all 3 of those guys, Jackson Chourio, we're not including in this discussion, right? We talked about him earlier.
Right.
Sorry, he's in the rundown. I think Arozarena, Buxton, and Springer are probably all must-start players in certainly any 5 outfielder league, and probably pretty close in 3 outfielders.
Yep, I think so. Some pitching standouts, some other standouts from the weekend, and there's lots of names on this list. I'm not going to read off what they did. I'll just throw the names your way. And Scott, you will get the first group: Seth Lugo, Michael King, Dylan Cease, Taj Bradley, all big starts this weekend. Anything to add on those names?
I mean, I could just add details about how dominant they've been, especially Michael King. I guess Michael King's the one I'll focus on here, because now in his last 10 starts, a 2.21 ERA, a 105 WHIP, 10.7 K per 9, pretty much living up to everyone's wildest dreams at the start of the year in those last 10 starts, as rough as it was in the beginning, where he was having trouble throwing his strikes, especially. In this one, he got 11 of his 19 whiffs on the changeup, which he threw 41% of the time. It is his best swing and miss pitch, but he threw it a lot more, which is always nice. And I just think Michael King's trending a great direction here. Really, really happy with him. Probably must start going forward.
I'm taking big L on Michael King. I was out on him preseason. He had that bad start, and I was completely out on him. I told people to drop him, and
I think we all did.
Yeah,
to drop him when he was as bad as it was. I mean, he was the only pitcher in baseball, in addition to the walks, he was giving up home runs when no one else was. He just seemed totally off, but it's great now.
This is the most innings he's thrown in the season, I believe, since 2018. So I do worry how it's going to hold up, but yeah, I don't think being skeptical of him makes any sense anymore. He's already made me look dumb twice.
Mm-hmm. Again, that is Michael King. The next group includes Pablo Lopez, Freddie Peralta, and Shota Imanaga. Big starts from each of those. Chris, anything to add on Imanaga, Peralta, and Pablo Lopez?
Yeah, Imanaga is one of those ones where the turnaround has been really abrupt. You know, he really struggled for a few starts. He's been really, really good for the last few starts. He hasn't really changed anything, though. Like, it's still like 85% fastball splitter. I think in this one, it might have been a little lower because he did throw a few more sweepers, got 4 whiffs with it. I think Pablo Lopez, Freddie Peralta, and Shota Imanaga, they all might be more prone than you'd like to stretches where they're not very helpful, but I think all 3 of them are absolutely must-start pitchers moving forward.
And 3 other names, Brady Singer, Jake Irvin, and Severino. Scott, anything on those 3?
It's a good bounce back start from Jake Irvin, who leaned on his fastball quite a bit. It's an effective fastball for not being one that is visually appealing. He got 9 of his 13 whiffs on it through 50% of the time, and it seemed to get him back on track after a couple of rough starts. So that was encouraging to see. Severino is, like I said after the last time we talked about him, that he just seemed to be unsure of himself and really searching for what kind of pitcher he was going to be. Because remember, he kind of reinvented himself as a ground ball pitcher at the start of the year, has gotten away from that in recent starts, and the results hadn't been good until this one. 6 2-8 innings against the Marlins. I will note it was against the Marlins. Yeah, he just changed his pitch mix a lot. And so we'll see where he goes from here. But if there's a chance Severino could stumble on something that works, and so I don't want to completely write him off, even though I don't think he's a high priority roster or anything like that.
Some hitting leftovers. Vlad Jr. hit 2 more home runs this weekend. Anthony Santander had himself a huge weekend as well. A double dong on Friday. He added a steal on Saturday, another home run on Sunday. He's up to 27 home runs now on the season. Jaron Duran picked up right where he left off. He had 6 hits, including 2 home runs. And Shohei Ohtani demolished a baseball on Sunday night. 1 for 3 with his 30th home run. 116.7 exit velocity, 473 feet. It looked like that ball legitimately left Dodger Stadium. It was crazy stuff, but we're kind of just used to that at this point from Shohei Ohtani. Bad job by me. I did mean to get to this earlier. I missed it earlier on the rundown, but shout out to Yordan Alvarez, who hit for the cycle on Sunday. It's just like one of the most improbable cycles I think you'll see. The 9th player in Astros history to accomplish that. And also shout out to the Hall of Fame class of 2024 who were inducted on Sunday. Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, Todd Helton, and Jim Leland. Some bullpen updates from the weekend, and for the Phillies on Friday, Jeff Hoffman pitched a clean 8th inning with a 1-run lead, facing 6, 7, and 8 in the Pirates lineup. Jose Alvarado got the 9th with a 1-run lead as well. He gave up 2 runs. He took his 3rd blown save and 4th loss. I don't know how much more they need to see to just give Hoffman majority of the save opportunities, but it feels like we are getting closer.
You know, he was the closer. I know it didn't come to a save chance because the AL won, but he was the closer for the NL team in the All-Star game. He was lined up to close that game. So among all NL players, he is considered the closer, but not necessarily.
Well, Jose Alvarado didn't make the All-Star team, Scott.
Yeah, if it were me managing the Phillies, I'd just go to Hoffman in the 9th inning to close out the game. But yeah, you know, it's continued this long, so you can't rule out the possibility that Rob Thompson sticks with the platoon there.
For the Tigers on Friday, Jason Foley entered in the 8th with no outs, a man on first and a 1-run lead, facing the heart of the Blue Jays lineup. He retired them in order, and then it was lefty Tyler Holton who got the 9th inning. He pitched a clean inning for his 3rd save, and he's only 3% rostered. Foley did face, he had the higher leverage situation facing the heart of the Blue Jays lineup, so do you guys actually think Tyler Holton is going to factor in here and get more saves?
I don't think he's going to get the majority of the saves. I don't think Foley is like untouchable in the 9th inning. I think he's just the best of some not great options for the Tigers.
He's pretty mediocre himself. So
yeah,
I do wonder, like, I don't know, maybe there were lefties coming up, or because he's significantly better against righties than he is against lefties. He has been his whole career. So I do wonder if it was just they happen to have 3 righties coming up in the 8th, and maybe there was a lefty or 2 coming up in the 9th. Maybe that might explain it.
For the Dodgers, some questions here. Yeah, on Friday, Daniel Hudson got the 9th inning with a 3-run lead. He gave up a hit, but picked up his 5th save. On Saturday, Evan Phillips then got the 10th inning with the game tied. He gave up a 2-run homer to Tyler O'Neill. And then on Sunday, Phillips was used again, this time in the 9th inning with a 6-run lead. He gave up 3 runs. He only recorded 1 out. Daniel Hudson came back on. He got the final 2 outs and picked up his 6th save. Phillips is going through it right now. Very rough July, 11.37 ERA, a 175 whip. His usage has been weird. He pitched the 6th inning in a game before the All-Star break. I think Daniel Hudson, if you need saves, you can go and take a shot. It also wouldn't surprise me if the Dodgers go out and trade for closers. So.
Well, I mean, Daniel Hudson has a 1.59 ERA, a 0.81 whip, 9.8 K per 9. So closer caliber numbers there. He's gotten each of the team's last 3 saves, including 2 this weekend. I think in leagues where saves are scarce, you got to consider him a pretty high priority pickup. I wish I had seen this save on Sunday before I put in my claims in those 15-team leagues, because he went for a modest amount in them. I would have probably bid more on Daniel Hudson than he went for, which isn't to say he's just the Dodgers closer now. I mean, before he got involved here, Alex Vezia was the one stealing saves from Evan Phillips, and he's a left-hander, so that may continue. But Evan Phillips, if nothing else, we can say Evan Phillips looks like he might be on the way out here.
For the Blue Jays on Saturday, Jimmy Garcia got the 9th inning with a 4-run lead. He struck out the side. And then on Sunday, Chad Green recorded the final 5 outs with a 1-run lead for his 7th save. Who do you guys think gets more saves the rest of the way? If they both remain on the Blue Jays, would it be Garcia or Chad Green?
I mean, I've been saying Jimmy Garcia, and the fact that he's only made 1 appearance and struck out all 3 certainly doesn't rule him out, but I was a little discouraged to see Chad Green get the save on Sunday. Jimmy Garcia didn't pitch, so maybe he just wasn't available. But it's a coin flip for me, I think. I certainly wouldn't be looking to drop either one of them right now.
I would lean Garcia, but I agree. It's pretty close to a coin flip.
And for the Rockies on Saturday, Victor Vodnik got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He struck out 1 for his 3rd save. He also pitched a clean 9th inning with a 4-run lead on Friday. So it feels like next up here for the Rockies is Victor Vodnik. If you play in deeper leagues, NL only leagues, I saw him out there. So you got to be pretty desperate, but
yeah.
Next up for the Rockies. To stream or not to stream on Monday, some players we can look at. We have Andre Palante, who's facing the Pirates. Michael Lorenzen against the White Sox. Tobias Myers at the Cubs. Gilbert Diaz at the Royals.
I could see a good Michael Lorenzen start. The White Sox are terrible.
Arrighetti at the A's.
And then Arrighetti at the A's is a real volatile pick. But I've had him in a few leagues, and there's been some real bright spots, and then a lot of real bad ones.
I'm going to surprise you. Pretty optimistic about these Monday streamers. I think Lorenzen and Arrighetti are fine choices. Lorenzen's probably the best.
Like Peterson against the Marlins.
David Peterson against the Marlins, I think is fine. Andre Palante at the Pirates. He's not going to have a brilliant start, but he's perfectly capable of a quality start. Tobias Myers, I know I'm higher on than Chris is on him in general, and the Cubs are a very middling matchup.
Yeah.
Even Gilbert Diaz at the Royals. I added him as a 2-star pitcher sleeper this week. I know we're doing daily streamers, not weekly streamers here, but Gilbert Diaz I added to the list.
Okay. And then on Tuesday, some options. Lance Lynn at the Pirates, Jose Quintana at the Yankees. We have John Gray versus the White Sox, Colin Ray at the Cubs, Jameson Taillon versus the Brewers, Jose Soriano at the Mariners.
Soriano's the number one for me.
Agreed.
Yep.
But Gray against the White Sox, I know it's been a rough go for him lately, but I could see that one going well. And same with Suarez against Miami.
Yep. I think
I'd rank him Soriano, Suarez, Gray.
All right, we're going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.